The millionaire froze when he heard the nanny sing his lost daughter's song. The evening sun cast long shadows across the white stone mansion in Charleston, South Carolina. Ethan Bennett walked through the marble corridors like a man carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. His footsteps echoed in the silence, a sound he'd grown too familiar with over the years. He stopped in front of a portrait hanging in the hallway. A little girl with bright eyes and a gap-toothed smile clutched a blue teddy bear. The golden plaque beneath read, Isabel Bennett, 2002 to 2006. But Ethan never accepted that second date. Not really. Isabel wasn't dead. She was lost. And he'd never stopped looking. 18 years. 18 years of dead-end leads, false hopes, and sleepless nights. 18 years of investigators who eventually gave up. Friends who stopped asking. And a world that moved on while he remained frozen in that terrible moment when his 4-year-old daughter vanished from a park in broad daylight. He rubbed his face, feeling every one of his 52 years, and headed upstairs. His youngest son, Noah, had been having nightmares again. The 5-year-old would wake up screaming, clutching his chest, trembling like something dark was chasing him through his dreams. Ethan tried his best to comfort him, but lately, he felt like he was failing at everything. Failing Noah, failing Caleb, his teenage son with Claudia, and most of all, still failing Isabel. Wherever she was, as he approached Noah's room, he heard something that made him freeze mid-step. A voice, soft, feminine, coming from inside, singing, Duerme, mi niño, bajo las estrellas, que papá te cuida desde donde estés. Ethan's heart stopped. His hand went to the wall to steady himself. The blood drained from his face. That melody, that song. He'd written it himself when Isabel was a baby. Made it up during one of those endless nights when she wouldn't sleep. When it was just the two of them in the nursery. The world quiet and small and perfect. He'd sung it in Spanish because his late wife Margaret loved the sound of it. Even though neither of them spoke the language fluently, he'd never written it down, never recorded it, never sang it to anyone else. Not to Claudia, not to Noah, not even to Caleb. It was theirs, his and Isabel's. So how the hell was someone singing it now? His hands trembled as he slowly pushed open the door. Inside, under the warm amber glow of the bedside lamp, sat Grace Parker, the new nanny he'd hired 3 weeks ago. 22 years old, long chestnut hair pulled back in a loose ponytail, delicate features, and sad eyes that always seemed to carry something heavy. She was rocking Noah gently, her eyes closed, singing that impossible song. Ethan couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't think. When Grace opened her eyes, she startled, seeing her employer standing frozen in the doorway with tears streaming silently down his face. Mr. Bennett, she stood quickly, carefully laying Noah back down. Is everything okay? Did something happen? He couldn't speak. His throat had closed up entirely. Grace approached him carefully, concern etched across her features. Sir, you're scaring me. What's wrong? Where? His voice came out as barely a whisper. Where did you learn that song? She blinked, confused. What song? The one you were just singing, the lullaby. His voice cracked. Where did you learn it? Grace looked even more confused now. I don't know. I've always known it. I guess, since I was really little. She shrugged helplessly. My adoptive mom used to say I'd sing it even before I could talk properly. She never knew where I learned it either. Why? Is something wrong with it? Ethan backed out of the room, his mind spinning out of control. This wasn't possible. It wasn't possible. Mr. Bennett, wait! But he was already walking away, his legs moving on autopilot down the stairs, down the long hallway into his study. He locked the door behind him and leaned against it. His chest heaving, with shaking hands, he opened the bottom drawer of his desk, the one he never let anyone else touch. Inside was a worn manila folder, its edges frayed from years of handling. He pulled it out and spread the contents across his desk. Photos of Isabel, police reports, witness statements that led nowhere, private investigator notes, newspaper clippings yellowed with age, and there, in his own handwriting from 18 years ago, a detail he'd nearly forgotten. Distinguishing marks, crescent moon-shaped birthmark on right wrist. Ethan stared at those words until they blurred. He spent the rest of the night in that study, going through everything again. Every photo, every report, every false lead, looking for something, anything, that could explain what he'd just heard. When dawn broke through the windows, he still didn't have answers. Just a desperate, terrifying hope that he was afraid to let himself feel. The next morning, Ethan moved through breakfast like a ghost. Claudia, his elegant and carefully composed wife, noticed immediately. "You look terrible," she said, sipping her coffee with perfect posture. "Were you in your study all night again? Couldn't sleep. You need to take something for that." Her tone was clipped, efficient. Claudia didn't do well with emotional messes. "Dr. Morrison can prescribe." "I'm fine." Caleb, their 17-year-old son, barely looked up from his phone. The kid had been distant for months now, angry at the world, and especially at Ethan for reasons that shifted daily. Grace entered the dining room with Noah, who immediately ran to hug his father. "Daddy, Grace says we can go to the park today if it's okay with you." Ethan forced a smile and ruffled his son's hair, but his eyes were on Grace, really looking at her for the first time since he'd hired her. Her features, her mannerisms, the way she moved. And then he saw it. Something he'd never noticed before, because he'd never had reason to look. She always wore a fabric bracelet on her right wrist, a simple, woven thing in blue and white. His heart started hammering. "Grace," he said, trying to keep his voice casual. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course, Mr. Bennett. That bracelet you always wear. Is there a reason you never take it off?" She instinctively touched it, a slight blush creeping up her neck. "Oh, it's silly, really. I'm curious. I have a birthmark," she admitted quietly. "On my wrist, I've always been kind of self-conscious about it, so I cover it up. My adoptive mom used to say it looked like a little moon, but I always thought it was weird looking." The room tilted. Claudia was saying something, but Ethan couldn't hear her over the roaring in his ears. A moon-shaped birthmark on her right wrist. She'd always known that song, the one he'd never taught anyone. Grace Parker, 22 years old. Adopted? No. It couldn't be. But what if? "Mr. Bennett." Grace was looking at him with concern again. "Are you sure you're all right?" "I'm fine," he lied. "Just tired." As Grace left the room with Noah, Claudia leaned over. "You're acting strange, even for you." "What's going on?" "Nothing." But it wasn't nothing. That afternoon, Ethan made a phone call he'd made 100 times before, but this time felt different. Robert Hayes. "Robert, it's Ethan Bennett." There was a pause. Robert Hayes had been working with Ethan for a decade on cold cases. Always professional, always compassionate. He'd become something close to a friend. "Ethan, what's going on? I need you to do something for me. Quietly, immediately. Name it. I need you to investigate someone, everything about her past. Adoption records, where she grew up, everything." "Who?" Ethan's voice was barely a whisper. "My son's nanny, Grace Parker." Another pause. "Why?" Ethan closed his eyes, standing alone in his study, looking at that faded photo of a 4-year-old girl holding a blue teddy bear. "Because I think she might be my daughter." Robert Hayes didn't ask questions over the phone. That's what Ethan had always appreciated about the man. He understood that some things needed to be said face to face, especially something this big. They met the next morning at a coffee shop 20 minutes outside Charleston, far enough that no one would recognize either of them. Robert was already there when Ethan arrived, sitting in a corner booth with 2 cups of black coffee waiting. "You look like hell," Robert said, as Ethan slid into the seat across from him. "Didn't sleep, I figured." Robert pushed one of the cups toward him. "So, your son's nanny, you think she's Isabel?" Just hearing someone else say it out loud made Ethan's chest tighten. "I know how it sounds. Tell me everything." So Ethan did. The song, the birthmark, the fact that Grace was adopted and had always known that lullaby, without knowing where it came from. When he finished, Robert sat back, processing. "That's a hell of a coincidence. Too big to be a coincidence. Maybe." Robert pulled out a small notebook. "But we need to be careful here, Ethan. If she really is Isabel, we can't spook her. And if she's not," he let that hang in the air, "I don't want to see you go through that kind of hope and disappointment. I know the risks." "Do you?" Robert's eyes were serious. "Because I've seen what false leads do to people. I've seen parents destroy themselves chasing ghosts. This isn't a ghost, Robert. She's in my house, taking care of my son, singing a song that only Isabel should know. Robert nodded slowly. All right, I'll do this, but we do it my way. Quiet, thorough, and by the book. Agreed. Agreed. First thing I'll need is a DNA sample. Hair with the root attached would be best. Can you get that without raising suspicion? Ethan nodded. She uses the guest bathroom sometimes. I can get a hairbrush. Good. Get it to me as soon as you can. In the meantime, I'll start digging into her background. Adoption records, where she grew up, any gaps in her timeline. Robert leaned forward. But Ethan, you need to act normal around her. Can you do that? I'll try. Trying isn't good enough. If Claudia or anyone else catches on that you're investigating the nanny, this whole thing could blow up in ways we can't control. Ethan knew he was right, but acting normal felt impossible when every time he looked at Grace, he saw his daughter's eyes staring back at him, back at the Bennett estate. Ethan moved through his days like he was walking a tightrope. Every interaction with Grace felt loaded, charged with meaning he couldn't explain without sounding insane. He watched her during breakfast. The way she cut Noah's pancakes into small pieces. The way she laughed at his silly jokes. He watched her in the afternoon when she helped with homework, patient and kind. Even when Noah got frustrated, he watched her at dinner, the way she moved through the house like she belonged there. And he watched that fabric bracelet on her right wrist, never coming off. 3 days after his meeting with Robert, an opportunity presented itself. Grace had taken Noah to the park for the afternoon, and Ethan slipped into the guest bathroom she sometimes used. His hands shook as he opened the drawer where she kept a few personal items. A hairbrush, some hair ties, a small bottle of lotion. The hairbrush had several long chestnut strands caught in the bristles. He carefully pulled them free, making sure to get the roots, and sealed them in a small plastic bag. He felt like a criminal, like he was violating her privacy, but he had to know. He met Robert that evening at the same coffee shop and handed over the sample. I'll rush it, Robert said. Should have results in 3 to 5 days. 3 to 5 days. Ethan wasn't sure he could survive that long, but someone else was watching too. Claudia Bennett hadn't gotten where she was by being oblivious. She noticed everything. The way Ethan stared at Grace during meals. The way he found excuses to ask her questions about her childhood. The way he'd become even more distracted than usual. At first, she thought maybe he was having an affair. It wouldn't be the first time a middle-aged man developed an inappropriate attraction to a younger woman working in his home. But no, it wasn't that kind of attention. It was something else. Something that made her deeply uneasy. She started paying closer attention. One evening, she found Ethan in his study again. That damned manila folder spread across his desk. He'd closed it quickly when she entered, but not before she caught a glimpse of old photos and police reports. Isabel, always. Isabel, you're obsessing again, Claudia said from the doorway. I'm not obsessing. You are, and it's not healthy. She stepped into the room, her heels clicking on the hardwood. Ethan, she's been gone for 18 years. You have to let her go. I'll never let her go. I'm not asking you to forget her. But this, she gestured at the folder. This isn't living. You have 2 other children who need you present, not stuck in the past. Don't tell me how to grieve my daughter. The temperature in the room dropped. They'd had this argument before, in various forms, and it never ended well. I'm trying to help you, Claudia said carefully. I don't need your help with this. She left without another word, but her mind was racing. Something was happening. Something involving that girl. The next morning at breakfast, Claudia observed the dynamic at the table with new eyes. Ethan barely touched his food, too busy stealing glances at Grace. Grace seemed uncomfortable under the scrutiny, but tried to focus on Noah, who was babbling about a dream he'd had. Grace stayed with me all night when I had the nightmare, Noah announced proudly. She sang me the special song. Ethan's fork clattered against his plate. What song, sweetheart? Claudia asked, her voice honey-sweet. The pretty one in Spanish, about stars and Papa watching over you. Noah beamed at Grace. It's the best song ever. Claudia looked at Ethan. His face had gone completely white. It's just a lullaby, Grace said quickly, clearly uncomfortable with the attention. Something I've always known. "How lovely," Claudia said, but her eyes were calculating. "Where did you learn it?" "I honestly don't remember. I've known it since I was little." "Fascinating," Claudia smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Family songs are so special, aren't they?" Ethan excused himself abruptly and left the table. Caleb barely looked up from his phone, but Claudia kept watching Grace, a cold knot forming in her stomach. Later that day, while Grace was at the park with Noah, Claudia let herself into the young woman's room. She told herself she was just being cautious, making sure the nanny they'd hired wasn't hiding anything dangerous or inappropriate. But really, she was looking for answers. The room was neat, modest, a few books on the nightstand, mostly about child development and early education. Some clothes in the closet, nothing expensive, a laptop on the small desk, and on the dresser, a single framed photo. Grace is a teenager with an older woman, both smiling. The caption read, "Me and Mom, 2017. Claudia studied the photo carefully. Grace couldn't have been more than 15 or 16. The woman with her, presumably her adoptive mother, had kind eyes and a warm smile. But what caught Claudia's attention was something else entirely. In the photo, teenage Grace wasn't wearing her usual bracelet, and clearly visible on her right wrist was a small, crescent-shaped birthmark. Claudia's blood ran cold. She'd seen that mark before, years ago, in police reports and missing person flyers that had papered Charleston for months after Isabel's disappearance. Distinguishing marks, crescent moon-shaped birthmark on right wrist. "Oh God," Claudia whispered. She quickly left the room, her heart pounding. This couldn't be happening. This couldn't be real. If Grace was Isabel, if that girl downstairs was Ethan's long-lost daughter, everything would change. Isabel was the firstborn, the primary heir. Caleb would be pushed aside. And Claudia's entire position in this family, everything she'd built over the past decade, would crumble. She needed time to think, to plan, because if Ethan found out the truth, if he confirmed the truth, Claudia would have to make some very difficult decisions. That night, as the house settled into its usual evening quiet, Ethan stood at his study window, staring out at the gardens below. His phone buzzed. A text from Robert. "Lab is processing the sample. Should have results by tomorrow evening. How are you holding up?" Ethan typed back. "Barely." Down the hall, he could hear Grace singing Noah to sleep again. That same impossible song, drifting through the house like a ghost. Tomorrow evening, in less than 24 hours, he'd know for certain whether he'd found his daughter or lost his mind. Either way, nothing would ever be the same. Robert Hayes had been a private investigator for 30 years, and he'd learned early on that the truth usually hid in the gaps, the spaces between official records where people's real lives happened. Grace Parker's file was full of gaps. He sat in his cramped office in downtown Charleston, surrounded by stacks of documents and glowing computer screens, piecing together the fractured timeline of a young woman's life. Birth certificate, none on file under Grace Parker before age 7. Early childhood records, nothing. No hospital visits, no school enrollment, no social services documentation. First official appearance, age 7, at Mercy Children's Home in Raleigh, North Carolina, brought in by a woman named Teresa Sullivan, who claimed to have found the girl abandoned. Adoption finalized 6 months later by the same Teresa Sullivan, though the paperwork was strangely incomplete. No birth parents listed, no origin story, just a child who appeared out of nowhere. Robert leaned back in his chair, rubbing his tired eyes. A child didn't just materialize at age 7 with no history. Someone had kept her hidden. Someone had erased her past. He pulled up everything he could find on Teresa Sullivan. Died in 2018 when Grace was 16. Car accident, quick and tragic. Before that, she'd been a nurse, lived modestly, kept to herself. No criminal record, no red flags, except one thing. Teresa had a sister, Veronica Sullivan. Robert's fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up Veronica's information. And there it was, the connection he'd been looking for. Employment history showed Veronica had worked at the Bennett estate from 2003 to 2006. She'd been a housekeeping supervisor, living on the property, trusted with keys to every room. Termination date, August 15th, 2006. Isabel Bennett disappeared on July 28th, 2006. Robert sat very still, his mind racing through the implications. Veronica had been there. She'd been in that house during the exact window when Isabel vanished. And less than 3 weeks later, she was fired. He dug deeper, found the termination notice in archived Bennett estate employment records. Veronica Sullivan had been dismissed for theft. Several valuable items had gone missing, and though nothing was ever proven, she'd been let go without reference. After her termination, Veronica seemed to disappear from Charleston entirely. No forwarding address, no new employment in the area. She'd just vanished, like she had something to hide. Robert picked up his phone and called Ethan. "Tell me," Ethan said, before Robert could even say hello. He was in his car, parked in some random lot because he couldn't have this conversation at home. "I found something. A connection." Ethan's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "What kind of connection?" Grace grew up in an orphanage in Raleigh. She was brought there at age 7 by a woman named Teresa Sullivan, who adopted her 6 months later. Teresa died in 2018, car accident. And Teresa had a sister, Veronica Sullivan. Robert paused. "Veronica worked at your estate, Ethan. She was there in 2006. She was fired 3 weeks after Isabel disappeared." The world tilted. Ethan couldn't breathe. "Are you telling me—" "I'm not telling you anything yet. I'm just following the evidence. But yes, the timing is suspicious as hell." Robert's voice was careful, measured. "There's more. Between ages 4 and 7, there are no records of Grace anywhere. Nothing. It's like she didn't exist. 4 and 7. The exact years Isabel would have been missing." "Where is Veronica now?" Ethan asked, his voice barely steady. "That's what I'm working on. She's been living off the grid for years, but I'll find her. In the meantime," Robert hesitated, "the DNA results should be ready this evening. Are you prepared for this, Ethan?" "Really prepared. I have to be." After hanging up, Ethan sat in his car for 20 minutes, staring at nothing, trying to process what he'd just learned. A woman who worked in his house. A woman he'd trusted with access to his family. A woman who'd been fired and disappeared right after his daughter vanished. It was too much to be coincidence. It was too perfectly, horribly aligned. Back at the Bennett estate, Grace was having a strange day. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Mr. Bennett had been acting bizarre for nearly a week now, staring at her during meals, asking odd questions about her childhood, seeming to want to say something but never quite doing it. And Mrs. Bennett had been cold in a way that made Grace's skin crawl. The woman had always been polite but distant, but now there was something calculating in her eyes whenever she looked at Grace. Even Caleb had been weird, watching her from doorways like he was trying to figure something out. Only Noah seemed normal. Thank God. The little boy had become her anchor in this increasingly unsettling household. "Grace, can we go to the park?" Noah asked, tugging on her sleeve. "Not today, buddy. It's supposed to rain." "Then can we make cookies?" She smiled. "Cookies I can do." They spent the afternoon in the kitchen, Noah standing on a stool beside her, flour dusting his nose as he helped mix the dough. Grace found herself humming without thinking about it, that old lullaby she'd always known, the one that felt like home even though she couldn't remember learning it. "Duerme, mi niño, bajo las estrellas." "I love that song," Noah said dreamily. "It makes the bad dreams go away." "You've been having a lot of those lately, huh?" He nodded seriously. "I dream about a sad girl. She's lost, and she's crying and looking for her daddy." Grace froze, her hands stilling in the cookie dough. "What does the girl look like?" Noah scrunched up his face, thinking, "I don't know. I can't see her face really good, but she's little like me, and she has brown hair like you." A chill ran down Grace's spine. She shook it off, forcing a smile. "Well, it's just a dream. It's not real." But even as she said it, she wasn't sure she believed it. That evening, Ethan's phone rang at exactly 6:47 p.m. He was in his study, door locked, pacing like a caged animal. When he saw Robert's name on the screen, his heart nearly stopped. "Tell me." "The DNA results came back." Robert's voice was steady, professional, but Ethan could hear the weight behind it. "Ethan, you need to sit down. Just tell me. It's a match. 97% probability of paternity." The room spun. Ethan grabbed the edge of his desk to keep from falling. "Say that again. Grace Parker is your biological daughter. She's Isabel." Ethan's knees gave out. He sank into his chair. Or maybe he fell. He couldn't tell. Tears streamed down his face, his body shaking with sobs he couldn't control. "Ethan, are you there?" "She's alive," he choked out. "She's been alive this whole time. Yes, she's in my house. She's been here for weeks and I didn't know." "You couldn't have known." "Ethan, listen to me. You need to stay calm. We need to figure out how to handle this carefully." But Ethan wasn't listening anymore. 18 years. 18 years of searching, of hoping, of praying, and she'd come back to him. Somehow. Impossibly. She'd found her way home. "I need to tell her," he said. "Not yet. We need to find Veronica first. We need to understand what happened, how she ended up with Teresa Sullivan. If we confront Grace now without answers, it could traumatize her. She has a right to know who she is, and she will. But we do this right, for her sake." Robert's voice was firm. "I'm closing in on Veronica's location. Give me 48 hours. Then we'll have the full story, and we can tell Grace the truth in a way that doesn't destroy her." Ethan wanted to argue. Every fiber of his being wanted to run upstairs right now, pull his daughter into his arms, and never let go. But Robert was right. Grace had no idea who she really was. Dropping this bomb on her without context, without answers, would be cruel. 48 hours, Ethan said. "That's all you get." Down the hall, Claudia stood outside Ethan's study door, her hand hovering over the handle. She'd heard him on the phone, heard the crying, and though she couldn't make out all the words through the heavy wood, she'd heard enough. DNA results. She's Isabel. She's been alive this whole time. Claudia backed away from the door slowly, her mind racing with horrifying clarity. It was true. Grace Parker was Isabel Bennett. The primary heir had returned. Everything Claudia had built, her marriage, her social position, her son's future, was about to be taken away by a girl who shouldn't even exist anymore. She walked to her bedroom on autopilot, closed the door, and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at nothing. She had 48 hours, maybe less, before Ethan told everyone the truth, before Grace learned who she really was, before Claudia's entire world collapsed. 48 hours to figure out what she was going to do about it. Her phone was in her hand before she'd fully decided. She scrolled through her contacts, stopped on a name she hadn't called in years. Marcus Chen, private investigator, specialized in making problems disappear. Her finger hovered over the call button. She thought about Caleb, about Noah, about everything she'd sacrificed to build this life. Then she thought about Grace, sweet, kind Grace who'd never hurt anyone, who sang lullabies to a little boy and made him feel safe. Claudia's hand trembled. She put the phone down. For now. Ethan didn't sleep that night. He couldn't. He sat in his study until dawn, staring at two photographs side by side on his desk. One was of Isabel at age 4, taken just days before she disappeared. Gap-toothed smile, bright eyes, that little crescent moon birthmark visible on her wrist as she waved at the camera. The other was a photo he'd taken from the estate's security footage just last week. Grace playing with Noah in the garden, laughing, that same birthmark hidden beneath her fabric bracelet. The similarities had always been there. He just hadn't let himself see them. The shape of her eyes, the way she tilted her head when she listened, that unconscious habit of tucking her hair behind her left ear when she was thinking. His daughter, his Isabel. She'd been right here all along. When the sun finally rose, painting the study in pale gold light, Ethan's phone buzzed with a text from Robert. "Found Veronica, she's in Greenville, Ski, about 2 hours away, heading there now. We'll call when I have her." 2 hours. Ethan could be patient for 2 more hours, except he couldn't. He went upstairs, moving quietly through the house. It was just past 6, early enough that most of the household was still asleep. But as he passed Noah's room, he heard that soft, familiar melody drifting through the cracked door. "Duerme, mi niño, bajo las estrellas." Ethan pushed the door open gently. Grace sat in the rocking chair by the window. Noah curled in her lap. Both of them bathed in morning light. She was singing so softly it was almost a whisper. Her eyes closed, lost in the melody. She looked so much like Margaret in that moment, His first wife, Isabel's mother, that Ethan's breath caught in his throat. Grace's eyes opened, and she startled slightly when she saw him. "Mr. Bennett, I'm sorry. Noah had another nightmare, and I don't apologize." His voice was rough with emotion. "You're good with him. He's a sweet kid. Makes it easy." She carefully shifted Noah's sleeping form. "I should put him back in bed." "Grace, wait." The words escaped before he could stop them. "Can I ask you something about your childhood?" She froze, that familiar guardedness settling over her features. Sure, I guess. Your adoptive mother. Teresa, what was she like?" Grace's expression softened. "She was kind. Really kind. She had this way of making you feel safe, you know. Like everything would be okay as long as she was there." Her eyes grew distant. "She died when I was 16. Car accident. I was in foster care for a while after that, until I aged out of the system. I'm sorry. That must have been hard." "It was, but she gave me good years. Better than what I had before, I think." Grace frowned slightly. "I don't remember much from before she adopted me. Just fragments. The orphanage was rough, and before that," she shook her head. "It's all really fuzzy. Sometimes I wonder if my brain just blocked it out." Ethan's heart was breaking. "Do you ever have dreams? Memories that feel real, but you can't quite place them?" Grace looked at him strangely. "Sometimes. Why are you asking me this?" He struggled for words that wouldn't give everything away. "You remind me of someone, that's all. Your daughter, Isabel." It wasn't a question. Grace had seen the portrait in the hallway, the one Ethan stopped in front of every day. "Noah told me about her. I'm sorry for what happened to your family." "Thank you," he wanted to tell her. God. He wanted to tell her so badly it physically hurt. "You should get some rest. I can take Noah." Grace nodded and carefully transferred the sleeping boy to Ethan's arms. As she moved past him toward the door, Ethan caught the faintest scent of lavender, the same soap Isabel had loved as a child. "Grace." She turned back. "Yes, I'm glad you're here, with us. You've been good for Noah, for all of us." Something flickered across her face. Surprise? Maybe. Or confusion. "Thank you, Mr. Bennett, that means a lot." After she left, Ethan held his sleeping son and tried not to fall apart. At 10 a.m., Robert called. "I've got her, Veronica Sullivan. She's in custody. Local police are holding her on an old warrant. I'm in the interrogation room with her now." Ethan was in his car. 30 seconds later, the 2-hour drive to Greenville stretching out before him like an eternity. He called Robert back on speakerphone. "What has she said?" "Not much yet. She's scared." "Knows why I'm here?" Robert's voice dropped lower. "Ethan, when you get here, you need to let me handle this. You can't go in there. If you see her face to face, you won't be able to control yourself. I want to hear it. I want to hear her admit what she did." "You will. I'll put you on audio feed, but you stay outside that room." "Agreed." "Fine." The drive was a blur. Ethan barely registered the highway, the other cars, the exit signs. His mind kept replaying that last day. July 28, 2006. The park. Margaret had taken Isabel while Ethan was at work. It was supposed to be a simple afternoon outing. Ice cream. Playground. Nothing special. Margaret had looked away for just a moment. Just one moment. And when she turned back, Isabel was gone. They'd searched for hours, days, weeks, months, years. And all that time, she'd been alive, stolen, hidden, by someone they'd trusted. The Greenville Police Department was a squat brick building that smelled like burned coffee and industrial cleaner. Robert met Ethan in the parking lot, his expression grave. "She's ready to talk. But Ethan, I need to warn you. This is going to be hard to hear. I don't care. I need to know." Robert led him to a small observation room with a one-way mirror. On the other side, Ethan could see a woman in her late 50s, thin and haggard, her hands clasped on the metal table. Veronica Sullivan. He barely recognized her. The last time he'd seen her, she'd been in her 30s, competent and professional. Someone he'd never thought twice about. Now she looked like a ghost. Robert entered the interrogation room, and his voice came through the speakers. "Ms. Sullivan, let's start from the beginning. July 28th, 2006. What happened? Veronica was silent for a long moment. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, I took her. Ethan's fists clenched so hard his nails drew blood. Why? Robert asked. Because they destroyed me. Veronica's voice grew stronger, bitter. I worked for that family for 3 years. 3 years of scrubbing floors and washing sheets and being treated like I was invisible. And then one day, a necklace goes missing. Just one necklace, and suddenly I'm a thief. No investigation, no benefit of the doubt. Just fired, escorted off the property like a criminal. So you took revenge by kidnapping a 4-year-old child. I didn't plan it. Veronica's hands shook. I was at the park that day. I don't even know why I was there, and I saw her. Little Isabel, wandering away from her mother just for a moment, and I thought about how easy it would be, how much it would hurt him. Ethan Bennett with his perfect life and his perfect family and his millions. How it would feel to take something from him the way he took everything from me. So you took her. Then what? I brought her to my sister, Teresa. Veronica's voice cracked. Teresa was so kind, too kind. She'd always wanted children but couldn't have them. I told her I found an abandoned girl, that the mother was a drug addict who didn't want her. Teresa believed me. She took Isabel, Grace, and raised her. Did your sister know the truth? No, never. Teresa thought she was saving a child. She loved that girl like she was her own. Tears streamed down Veronica's face now. When Teresa died, I thought about coming forward. I did. But Grace was 16, almost an adult. What good would it do to destroy her life all over again? Robert leaned forward. You ruined countless lives with what you did. Isabel's parents, her family, Grace herself, who grew up not knowing who she really was. I know, God. I know. Veronica buried her face in her hands. I've lived with it every day. The guilt, the shame. I thought I was getting revenge, but all I did was become a monster. In the observation room, Ethan couldn't breathe. His entire body shook with rage and grief, and something that felt like vindication and devastation all at once. Robert's voice came through the speaker again. Isabel Bennett is alive. She's been working as a nanny in her own father's house for the past month. Not knowing who she is, Veronica looked up, shock and horror written across her face. She's there, in that house. She is, and in the next few hours, she's going to learn the truth about her life, about what you took from her. Robert stood. I hope you're ready to face the consequences of what you've done. 20 minutes later, Ethan sat in his car in the parking lot, hands gripping the steering wheel, trying to steady his breathing. Robert knocked on the window. Ethan rolled it down. The police are filing charges. She'll be arraigned tomorrow. Robert's voice was gentle. You got your answers, Ethan. Now you need to go home and talk to your daughter. How do I tell her? How do I explain that her entire life has been a lie? Carefully, honestly, and with a lot of love. Robert squeezed his shoulder. But you tell her today, she deserves to know. Ethan nodded, though he had no idea how he was going to do this. He drove back to Charleston in a daze, practicing the words in his head, trying to find some combination that wouldn't shatter Grace completely. Your name isn't Grace Parker. It's Isabel Bennett. You're my daughter. You were stolen from me 18 years ago. Everything you think you know about yourself is wrong. How do you tell someone that? How do you give someone back a life they don't remember losing? By the time he pulled into the estate's long driveway, the sun was setting. He could see Grace through the window, playing a board game with Noah at the dining room table, both of them laughing. His daughter, his beautiful, lost, found daughter. It was time to bring her home. Ethan stood in the driveway for 15 minutes, gathering the courage to walk into his own house. Through the dining room window, he could see Grace and Noah absorbed in their board game, their laughter carrying faintly through the glass. The scene was so perfectly normal, so beautifully mundane, that the thought of shattering it felt like a crime. But she deserved the truth. Today, he was reaching for the door handle when his phone buzzed. Claudia? Where have you been? We need to talk now. Ethan's stomach dropped. Something in those words felt dangerous. He found Claudia in the study, standing by the window with her arms crossed, her posture rigid. She didn't turn when he entered. You went to Greenville today, she said. Not a question. How did you? I have the tracker on your car, Ethan, for safety, remember? Now she turned, and her eyes were cold. You found her, Veronica Sullivan, the woman who took Isabel. The heir left the room. You've been listening to my calls. I've been trying to understand why my husband has been losing his mind over the nanny. Claudia's voice was eerily calm. Now I know. Grace is Isabel, and you were going to tell her without even discussing it with me first. This isn't your decision to make. The hell it isn't. I'm your wife, Caleb's mother. This affects all of us. She moved closer, her heels clicking on the hardwood. Have you thought about what this does to our family? To Caleb? He's going to lose everything. His inheritance, his place, his father's attention. Again, Caleb isn't losing anything. This isn't about money. It's always about money, Ethan. Don't be naive. Claudia's composure cracked slightly. That girl out there, she gets everything. The estate, the company, your love. And what do we get? The scraps. She's my daughter. So is Caleb your son. So is Noah. Claudia's voice rose. But you've been so obsessed with the ghost of Isabel that you've barely been present for them. And now that she's back, what? The rest of us just disappear. Ethan stared at the woman he'd married, seeing clearly for the first time how frightened she was, not just of losing money or status, but of losing relevance, of becoming invisible in her own home. I love my sons, he said quietly. That will never change. But Grace, Isabel, she was stolen from me, from us. I can't ignore that. You can't fix it either. She doesn't remember being Isabel. She doesn't remember you. You're going to drop this bomb on her and expect what? A happy reunion. Gratitude. Claudia shook her head. You'll destroy her. Ethan. And for what? To ease your own guilt. She has a right to know who she is. She knows who she is. She's Grace Parker, a young woman who survived a hard childhood and made something of herself. You want to take that away from her and replace it with trauma and confusion. Ethan's resolve wavered. Not because Claudia was right. She wasn't. But because there was a sliver of truth in her words. Telling Grace would hurt her. There was no way around that. I'm telling her tonight, he said. I wanted you to know first, as a courtesy. But this isn't a negotiation. Claudia's expression hardened into something Ethan had never seen before. Then you're on your own. Don't expect me to pick up the pieces when this all falls apart. She left the room, and Ethan felt the ground shift beneath him. But Claudia didn't leave the house. She went to her bedroom, locked the door, and made a phone call. Marcus, it's Claudia Bennett. I need your help with something. Urgently. Marcus Chen's voice was smooth, professional. Mrs. Bennett, it's been a while. What can I do for you? I need you to look into someone, Grace Parker. She works for us as a nanny. Claudia paced, her mind racing. I need to know everything about her. Weaknesses, secrets, anything that could be problematic. How quickly do you need this? 24 hours. There was a pause. That's fast and expensive. Money isn't an issue. Just find me something I can use. After she hung up, Claudia sat on the edge of her bed, her hands trembling slightly. She wasn't proud of what she was doing, but she wasn't going to stand by and watch her entire life crumble because of a girl who'd been gone for 18 years. If Ethan wouldn't protect their family, she would. Downstairs, Grace was putting Noah to bed when Caleb appeared in the doorway. Can I talk to you? He asked, his voice uncharacteristically serious. Grace glanced at Noah, who was already half asleep. Sure, let me just... It's important. Something in his tone made her nervous. She tucked Noah in quickly and followed Caleb out into the hallway. What's going on? She asked. Caleb looked uncomfortable, like he was wrestling with something. My dad. Has he been acting weird around you? Grace's heart skipped. I mean, yeah, a little. Why? And my mom, she's been watching you, like, really watching you. Caleb, you're scaring me. What's this about? He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. I don't know exactly, but something's happening. Something big, and I think it involves you. Me? Why would anything involve me? I heard my mom on the phone earlier. She mentioned your name, and she sounded, I don't know, scared, maybe, or angry. Caleb met her eyes. Just be careful, okay? I don't know what's going on, but I have a bad feeling about it. Before Grace could respond, Ethan's voice called from downstairs. Grace, can you come down here, please? Caleb and Grace exchanged a look. her stomach twisted with anxiety. "I'll be nearby," Caleb whispered. "If you need anything." Grace descended the stairs slowly, her mind spinning with questions. What could Ethan possibly want at this hour? And why did it feel like the entire house was holding its breath? She found him in the living room, standing by the fireplace. He looked pale, exhausted, like he'd aged 10 years since morning. "Is everything okay?" she asked carefully. "Please, sit down." His voice was gentle but strained. Grace perched on the edge of the sofa, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Mr. Bennett, if I've done something wrong—" "You haven't, God, Grace. You haven't done anything wrong." He sat across from her, and she could see his hands shaking. "I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen to everything before you react. Can you do that?" Her heart was pounding now. "Okay." Ethan took a deep breath, clearly struggling with where to begin. "A week ago, I heard you singing to Noah, a lullaby in Spanish." Grace nodded slowly, confused. "Yes, that song. I wrote it 18 years ago for my daughter Isabel. I never taught it to anyone, never shared it. It was ours." The room tilted. "I don't understand." "You have a birthmark on your right wrist, shaped like a crescent moon." Grace's hand instinctively went to her bracelet. "How did you—" "Isabel had the same birthmark, in the exact same place." "Mr. Bennett, what are you saying?" Grace's voice was barely a whisper. "I'm saying—" Ethan's eyes filled with tears. "I'm saying I had your DNA tested, and the results came back yesterday, Grace. You're not who you think you are." The world stopped spinning. "Your name is Isabel Bennett. You're my daughter. You were kidnapped when you were 4 years old by a woman named Veronica Sullivan. She worked in this house. She gave you to her sister Teresa to raise. Teresa never knew the truth." Grace couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The words were hitting her like physical blows. "No," she said. "No, that's impossible. I know this is overwhelming. I know it doesn't make sense. But it's true. I have the DNA results. I found Veronica. She confessed everything." Ethan leaned forward, his voice breaking. "Grace, I've been looking for you for 18 years, and you've been alive this whole time." Tears were streaming down Grace's face now, but she didn't know why she was crying. Shock, fear, confusion, something else she couldn't name. "I don't remember," she whispered. "I don't remember any of it. I know you were so young, and I think your mind protected you by blocking it out." Ethan reached out like he wanted to take her hand, but stopped himself. "But it's true. You're my daughter. You're Isabel." Grace stood abruptly, backing away. I can't. "Grace, please, don't call me that." She was shaking all over. "My name is Grace. Grace Parker. That's who I am. I don't know who Isabel is." "You are Isabel." "No." The word came out as a sob. "You don't get to just tell me that my entire life is a lie, that everything I know about myself is wrong. You can't do that. I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm trying to give you back what was stolen. Well, maybe I don't want it." Grace was crying so hard she could barely see. "Maybe I was fine being Grace. Maybe I didn't need to know that my whole childhood was a lie, that the woman I called Mom didn't even know who I really was, that I was stolen like some object." She couldn't finish. She ran from the room, past a stunned Caleb in the hallway, out the front door into the dark. Ethan started to follow, but Caleb blocked his path. "Dad, let her go. She needs space. I can't You just destroyed her entire world. Give her a minute to breathe." Ethan sank onto the sofa, his head in his hands, and finally let himself cry. Upstairs, hidden in the shadows of the hallway, Claudia had heard everything, and she was already planning her next move. Grace ran until her lungs burned and her legs gave out. She ended up in the estate gardens, collapsed on a stone bench near the fountain, sobbing so hard her whole body shook. "You're my daughter. You're Isabel." The words kept echoing in her head, impossible and terrifying and somehow horrifyingly true, because the moment Ethan had said it, something deep inside her had shifted, like a door she didn't know existed had cracked open, and light was flooding through. She pressed her palms against her temples, trying to stop the images flashing through her mind. A park, swings, ice cream melting down her hand. A woman's voice. "Stay close, sweetheart." Laughter. Then different hands. Strange hands. Fear. No, 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 Grace. She looked up to find Caleb standing a few feet away, hands in his pockets, looking uncertain. Did he send you? Her voice was raw. No, I came on my own. He sat down on the other end of the bench, leaving space between them. I heard what he told you. I was in the hallway. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. So it's true then. You believe him. I don't know what to believe. But my dad, I've never seen him like that. Whatever he told you, he believes it. Caleb was quiet for a moment. If it is true, that means you're my sister. My older sister. Grace let out a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. This is insane. This whole thing is insane. Yeah, it really is. Caleb picked at a loose thread on his jeans. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. About all of it. I've spent the last few years being pissed that my dad couldn't get over losing you. Isabel. Whoever. And now you're here, and it's real, and I don't know how to feel about any of it. That makes two of us. They sat in silence, the fountain's gentle splashing the only sound. Finally, Grace spoke again. I've been having these dreams. Memories, maybe. I don't know. She wiped her eyes. A big house. A man crying. A song. I always thought they were just nightmares from when I was in the orphanage. But what if they were real? Caleb finished quietly. Grace pulled off her fabric bracelet, staring at the crescent moon birthmark she'd always hated. Your father asked me about this a week ago. He already knew, didn't he? He already knew who I was. Probably suspected. Sounds like he needed proof before he said anything. He should have told me sooner. Let me prepare, not just ambush me like that. I don't think there's a good way to tell someone their life is a lie, Caleb said. But yeah, he could have handled it better. Grace stood abruptly. I can't go back in there tonight. I can't face him. Or your mother, or anyone. Where will you go? I don't know. A hotel, anywhere. She started walking toward the driveway. Grace, wait. Caleb caught up with her. At least let me drive you. You're in no condition to be behind a wheel. She wanted to argue, but he was right. Her hands were still shaking, and she could barely see through her tears. The drive to a nearby hotel was silent. When Caleb pulled up to the entrance, he turned to her. For what it's worth, I'm glad you're alive, even if everything is completely messed up right now. He hesitated. And I'm sorry about my mom. She's probably going to make this harder than it needs to be. What do you mean? Just be careful around her. She's not as composed as she pretends to be. He looked like he wanted to say more but didn't, after Caleb left. Grace checked into a room and immediately collapsed on the bed, exhausted but unable to sleep. Her phone buzzed constantly. Texts from Ethan, calls she didn't answer. Finally, at 2 a.m, she opened her laptop and typed into the search bar, Isabel Bennett missing 2006. Hundreds of results appeared. News articles, missing person flyers, a Facebook page that was still active, still hoping for her return after all these years. Grace clicked on the first article, dated July 30th, 2006. 4-year-old Isabel Bennett vanished from Waterfront Park yesterday afternoon while visiting with her mother, Margaret Bennett. Police are treating this as a possible abduction. The Bennett family is offering a $500,000 reward for information leading to Isabel's safe return. There was a photo. A little girl with brown hair and bright eyes, holding a blue teddy bear. Grace stared at the image, her heart pounding. The girl's face was round with baby fat. But the eyes, God, the eyes looked exactly like hers. She scrolled through more articles. The search efforts, the false leads, the family's desperate pleas, and then, 2 years later, Margaret Bennett, mother of missing child Isabel, dies in car accident. Grace's hand flew to her mouth. Ethan's first wife, Isabel's mother, had died, and she'd never known that her daughter was alive. The grief of that realization hit Grace like a truck. She spent the rest of the night reading everything she could find, watching old news footage, staring at pictures of a little girl she didn't remember being. By dawn, she'd made a decision. Back at the Bennett estate, Ethan hadn't slept either. He'd spent the night in his study, phone in hand, waiting for Grace to call or text or give any sign that she was okay. Claudia appeared in the doorway at 7 a.m. perfectly dressed and made up despite the early hour. "She's not coming back," Claudia said. "You realize that, don't you? She will. She just needs time." "Time for what? To process that you ripped her entire identity away? To forgive you for destroying her life?" Claudia's voice was cold. "You should have left her alone, Ethan. Let her be Grace Parker. Let her be happy. She deserved to know the truth. She deserved a choice. You took that from her." Claudia turned to leave, then stopped. "Marcus found some interesting things about your precious Grace." "By the way," Ethan's head snapped up. "What are you talking about? Who's Marcus?" "An investigator. A real one, who knows how to find things people want hidden." She pulled out her phone, scrolling through something. "Did you know Grace spent time in a psychiatric facility when she was 17? Depression and dissociative episodes, apparently. Did you know she was arrested for shoplifting when she was 19? The charges were dropped, but still. What the hell are you doing, Claudia? Protecting our family. Someone has to." She met his eyes. "That girl is unstable, Ethan. Troubled. And now you've given her access to everything. Our home, our children, our fortune. What happens when she has another episode? When she decides she wants revenge for the childhood she lost?" "Get out," Ethan said, his voice dangerously quiet. "I'm just saying what everyone will be thinking once this gets out. The long-lost daughter returns, conveniently right when she's old enough to claim her inheritance." "Get out." Claudia left with a satisfied smile. Ethan's hands were shaking with rage. He knew what she was doing, planting seeds of doubt, trying to turn Grace's past against her, protecting her own position. But what scared him was how effective it might be. Grace returned to the estate at noon, looking exhausted but determined. She found Ethan in his study, and for a long moment, they just stared at each other. "I read everything," she said finally. "Every article, every report. I saw the pictures." Her voice cracked. "My mother, Margaret, she died looking for me. She never knew I was alive." "No, she didn't." Ethan's own voice was thick with emotion. "That's been the hardest part, knowing she died believing she'd failed you. I don't remember her. I don't remember you. I don't remember any of it." Grace wiped her eyes. "But I believe you. About the DNA. About what happened. I believe you." Relief flooded through Ethan. "Thank you, God, Grace, thank you. But I'm not ready to be Isabel, not yet, maybe not ever." She took a shaky breath. "I need time. I need therapy. I need to figure out who I am now that everything I thought I knew is wrong. Whatever you need, anything. And I can't stay here. Not right now. It's too much. Being in this house, seeing you every day, feeling the weight of expectations I can't meet." Ethan's heart sank, but he nodded. "I understand. But please, let me help. Let me pay for therapy, for a place to stay. Let me do something." "Okay." Grace's voice was small. "But I need space. No phone calls every day. No constant check-ins. I need to process this on my own terms." "Of course. Whatever you need." Grace turned to leave, then stopped. "Can I ask you something? Did you love me? When I was little? Before I was taken? Did you love me?" Ethan's face crumpled. "More than anything in this world. You were everything to me." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I wish I remembered that. Maybe someday you will." After she left, Ethan sat alone in his study, grief and hope warring inside him. He'd found his daughter, but he'd also lost her all over again. Upstairs, Claudia watched from her bedroom window as Grace drove away, and she felt something very close to relief. 3 weeks passed in an uneasy truce. Grace had moved into a small apartment downtown, funded by Ethan but maintained at arm's length. She'd started therapy twice a week with Dr. Sarah Chen, a trauma specialist who was helping her navigate the impossible reality of her fractured identity. The memories were coming back in fragments, disjointed pieces that didn't quite fit together yet. A nursery with yellow walls, the smell of Margaret's perfume, Ethan's voice reading bedtime stories, and then the darkness, strange hands, a car, fear so overwhelming it made her physically ill to remember. But she wasn't ready to go back to the Bennett estate, wasn't ready to be Isabel. Ethan respected her distance, though it was killing him. He sent brief texts every few days, thinking of you, here when you're ready, and left it at that. Noah asked about her constantly, confused why his favorite nanny had disappeared. Caleb had visited her apartment twice, bringing takeout and sitting in comfortable silence while they watched terrible reality TV. Only Claudia seemed pleased with the arrangement. Robert Hayes called Ethan on a Thursday morning, his voice tense. "We have a problem." Ethan was in his office, trying to focus on work and failing miserably. "What kind of problem?" "Veronica Sullivan made bail yesterday." "What? How?" "The charges were, someone paid it, a lot of money, and before you ask." "No, I don't know who. The transaction was buried under layers of shell companies." Robert paused. "Ethan, she disappeared. She cut off her ankle monitor and vanished. Police are looking for her now, but what? I think someone helped her. Someone who has a vested interest in keeping her quiet or making her disappear permanently." Ethan's blood ran cold. "Claudia, I can't prove it, but the timing is suspicious, and I've been digging into your wife's financials. She's made some very large withdrawals in the past few weeks. Payments to Marcus Chen, a private investigator with a questionable reputation. I know about Marcus. She told me she hired him to investigate Grace. It's more than that. Chen specializes in making problems disappear, and I mean that literally." Robert's voice was grave. "Ethan, I think Claudia is planning something bad. You need to protect Grace. I'll call her right now. Do more than call. Get her somewhere safe and watch your back. If Claudia is willing to help a kidnapper escape, there's no telling what else she might do." Ethan tried Grace's phone. No answer. He tried again, straight to voicemail. Panic rising. He called Caleb. "Have you heard from Grace today?" "No." "Why? What's wrong?" "Veronica Sullivan escaped. I think your mother might be involved. I need you to go to Grace's apartment and make sure she's okay." "Dad, what are you talking about? Mom wouldn't." "Caleb, please, just go check on her now." 20 agonizing minutes later, Caleb called back. "She's not here. Landlord said she left early this morning. She didn't say where." Ethan's hands were shaking. "Find her. Call her friends. Check her usual places. I'm calling the police." Grace was actually at Dr. Chen's office, her phone on silent in her purse, working through another difficult session. "Tell me about the dreams again," Dr. Chen said gently. "They're getting more vivid, more specific." Grace hugged a pillow to her chest. "Last night, I dreamed about a woman, Margaret. I couldn't see her face clearly, but I could feel how much she loved me, how safe I felt with her. And then she was gone, and I was alone, and someone was carrying me away, and I was screaming for my mommy." Her voice broke. Dr. Chen handed her a tissue. "These aren't just dreams, Grace. They're memories. Your mind is finally feeling safe enough to let you remember. I don't want to remember. It hurts too much. I know, but you can't heal from something you refuse to acknowledge." Dr. Chen leaned forward. "You've spent your whole life feeling like something was missing, like you didn't quite fit in your own skin. Now you know why. And yes, it's painful, but it's also the truth. And the truth, however hard, is better than living a lie." Grace nodded, wiping her eyes. "Ethan, Mr. Bennett, he's been so patient. He texts just enough to let me know he's there, but not so much that it's overwhelming. But I can feel how much he's hurting, how much he wants his daughter back. Do you want to be his daughter?" "I don't know. I don't know how to be Isabel when all I've ever been is Grace." She looked at the therapist desperately. "How do I reconcile those two people? How do I become someone I don't remember being? Maybe you don't have to choose. Maybe you can be both, Grace and Isabel. The woman you've become and the child you were." Dr. Chen smiled softly. "Identity isn't singular, Grace. We're all made up of many versions of ourselves. The key is integration, not erasure." When Grace finally left the therapy session and checked her phone, she found 17 missed calls from Ethan, 5 from Caleb, and a voicemail from a number she didn't recognize. The voicemail made her blood run cold. It was a woman's voice, rough and desperate. "Grace, this is Veronica Sullivan. I know you have no reason to trust me, but you're in danger. Claudia Bennett paid my bail. She wants me gone, permanently. But before I disappear, you need to know the truth. Everything. Meet me at Waterfront Park near the old playground. 1 hour. Come alone. Please. I owe you that much." Grace stood frozen on the sidewalk, people flowing around her like water around a stone. Veronica, the woman who'd stolen her life, who'd ripped her from her family and created this nightmare, and she wanted to meet. Grace should call the police, should call Ethan, should do anything except what she was about to do. But she needed to hear it, needed to look this woman in the eye and understand why. She texted Caleb, "I'm okay. Had my phone off. We'll call soon." Then she drove to Waterfront Park. The playground was mostly empty on a weekday afternoon. A few mothers with toddlers, some joggers, no one paying much attention. Grace found Veronica sitting on a bench near the swings, looking haggard and terrified. When she saw Grace approach, she stood up quickly. "You came, thank God. You have 5 minutes," Grace said, her voice cold. "Then I'm calling the police." "That's fair." Veronica's hands shook. "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But you need to know the truth before Claudia." She stopped, looking around nervously. "She hired someone to kill me, Marcus Chen. I was supposed to die in a prison riot, but I got wind of it and ran. Why would she do that? Because I'm a loose end, a witness. If I testify about what I did, it opens the door for you to legally reclaim your identity, your inheritance, everything." Veronica stepped closer. "Claudia can't let that happen. Her entire life depends on you, staying Grace Parker, on you disappearing again. That's insane. She wouldn't..." "She poisoned her own son." Grace froze. "What?" "2 nights ago, little Noah. She put something in his food. Not enough to kill him, but enough to make him sick. She was going to blame you, make it look like you were unstable. Dangerous, but Ethan wouldn't let her. He protected you. How do you know this?" "Because she told me. She visited me in jail, offered me money to disappear, and when I hesitated, she threatened me." Veronica pulled out her phone, showing Grace a recorded conversation. Claudia's voice, cold and calculating, discussing removing obstacles and protecting the family legacy. Grace felt sick. "I need to warn Ethan, Noah." "Noah's fine. Ethan figured it out before it got serious. But Grace, you're next. She can't hurt you directly. Too obvious. But she can make you disappear. Make it look like you ran away. Couldn't handle the pressure. And once you're gone..." Veronica didn't finish the sentence. "Why are you telling me this? You destroyed my life. Why help me now?" Veronica's eyes filled with tears. "Because I'm trying to die with a shred of decency. What I did to you was unforgivable. I stole your childhood, your mother, your family. I can't give that back, but I can give you this, the truth about who's still trying to hurt you, and evidence." She handed Grace a USB drive. "Everything is on here, the recordings, the financial transactions, all of it. Take it to the police. Stop her before she hurts anyone else." Grace took the drive with trembling hands. "For what it's worth," Veronica whispered. "You were loved, so loved. Your father never stopped looking for you. Your mother died, still hoping you'd come home. And Teresa, my sister, she loved you too. She never knew what I'd done, but she gave you the best life she could." "I know," Grace said quietly. "And I loved her too." Veronica nodded, tears streaming down her weathered face. "I'm going now. Somewhere she can't find me. I won't testify. I can't. Not if I want to stay alive. But you have everything you need to stop her." She started to walk away, then turned back one last time. "I'm so sorry, Isabel, for all of it." Grace watched her disappear into the crowd, then looked down at the USB drive in her hand. This was it. The evidence that could destroy Claudia, protect her family, end this nightmare. But it would also mean war, and Grace wasn't sure she was ready for that. Grace sat in her car in the parking lot for 20 minutes, the USB drive burning like hot coal in her hand. Her phone kept buzzing. Ethan, Caleb, even a text from Robert Hayes she didn't remember giving her number to. Finally, she called Ethan. "Grace, thank God, where are you? Are you safe?" "I'm fine, I met with Veronica." Silence. Then, "You what?" "She called me, said she had information about Claudia, Ethan. She gave me evidence, recordings, financial records, everything." Grace's voice shook. "Your wife tried to have her killed, and she did something to Noah." "I know. I suspected it 2 nights ago when Noah got sick. The doctors found traces of ipecac in his system, something to induce vomiting. Claudia was the only one who handled his food that night. Ethan's voice was hollow with grief and rage. I've been gathering evidence, talking to lawyers. I was going to confront her tonight. Ethan, she's dangerous. Veronica thinks she's planning to make me disappear. Then come here. Come home. Let me protect you. Home. The word landed strangely. The Bennett estate wasn't home. It was the place she'd been stolen from. But her apartment didn't feel like home either anymore. Nowhere did. I'll come, but I'm bringing this evidence straight to the police. Agreed? I'll call Robert and have him meet us at the house. We do this together. Grace arrived at the Bennett estate just as the sun was setting, painting the white stone mansion in shades of gold and crimson. The beauty of it felt wrong somehow, like a pretty facade hiding something rotten. Robert Hayes was already there, waiting by his car. He was a solid, reassuring presence. Exactly the kind of person you'd want on your side in a crisis. Grace, he said gently. You okay? Not even a little bit. That's fair. He glanced at the USB drive in her hand. That's the evidence. Everything Veronica gave me. I haven't looked at it yet. Let's go inside and review it together. Then we call the police. Ethan met them at the door, and for a moment, he and Grace just looked at each other. Then, impulsively, she hugged him. It was brief, awkward, but real. Thank you for believing me, she whispered. Always, he whispered back. They gathered in Ethan's study. The door locked. Robert plugged the USB drive into Ethan's computer, while Grace and Ethan stood behind him, watching the screen. The first file was an audio recording. Claudia's voice, crystal clear. I need you to handle the Sullivan woman. She's become a liability. Make it look like a prison incident. I'll double your usual fee. A man's voice, presumably Marcus Chen. And if the girl becomes a problem too, then we'll discuss options. But one crisis at a time. The recording ended. Grace felt bile rise in her throat. The next files were financial records showing large payments from Claudia's personal accounts to Marcus Chen's shell companies. Dates aligned perfectly with Veronica's bail, with Noah's illness, with everything. The final file was a video. Claudia, alone in her bedroom, talking on the phone. I don't care what it takes. That girl cannot be allowed to claim her inheritance. If she won't leave voluntarily, we make her leave. Permanently if necessary. My son's future depends on it. Robert sat back, his face grim. This is enough. More than enough. We call the police right now. Wait. Ethan's voice was strained. Where's Claudia? And where are the boys? As if in answer, they heard Noah's laughter from somewhere in the house, followed by Claudia's voice. Come here, sweetheart. Let's get you ready for dinner. Robert stood. I'm calling the police now, Ethan. Go get Noah, Grace. Stay here with me. But Grace was already moving toward the door. No, I need to see her. I need to look her in the eye. Grace, that's not a good idea. I don't care. She tried to destroy me. She tried to hurt a child. I'm not hiding anymore. Grace found Claudia in the dining room, setting the table with perfect precision. Noah was coloring at the far end, and Caleb was on his phone in the corner. The scene was so painfully normal it felt surreal. Claudia looked up when Grace entered, and something flickered across her face. Surprise, then calculation, then a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Grace, what a surprise. I thought you'd moved on from us. Where's Ethan? Caleb asked, sensing tension. He's coming. Grace kept her eyes on Claudia. We need to talk, all of us. How ominous. Claudia set down a plate with deliberate care. Is this about your identity crisis? Because I really think you should work that out with a therapist, not... I know what you did. The room went silent. Even Noah stopped coloring. I beg your pardon. Claudia's voice was ice. I know about Marcus Chen, about the payments, about Veronica. Grace took a step closer. I know you tried to have her killed. I know you poisoned Noah. Caleb's head snapped up. What? That's absurd, Claudia said smoothly. Noah got food poisoning. These things happen. Ipecac isn't food poisoning. It's deliberate. Grace's voice was shaking but firm. You put it in his food to make him sick so you could blame me, so you could have an excuse to get rid of me. Mom? Caleb stood up slowly. Tell me she's lying. Claudia's mask was cracking. Caleb, sweetie, she's clearly delusional. The stress of discovering her past has... I have recordings. Evidence. Everything. Grace pulled out her phone, playing the audio file. Claudia's voice filled the room, cold and calculating, discussing handling the Sullivan woman and removing obstacles. The color drained from Claudia's face. Noah looked confused. Mommy, what's happening? Caleb backed away from his mother like she was a stranger. You tried to hurt Noah, your own son. I would never. It was just to make him a little sick, just enough to... Claudia stopped, realizing what she'd just admitted. Just enough to frame Grace, Caleb finished, his voice breaking. Just enough to destroy her credibility so we could keep the money. That's what this is about, isn't it? The inheritance. It's about protecting our family. Claudia's composure finally shattered. Everything I've done has been to protect you and Noah, that girl. She pointed at Grace. She's a threat to everything we've built. She gets the estate, the company, everything. And what do you get? Nothing. I couldn't let that happen. So you became a criminal instead. Caleb's eyes were filled with tears. You tried to have someone killed. You poisoned your own kid. What the hell is wrong with you? I did what I had to do. Claudia was shouting now. Your father has been obsessed with his dead daughter for 18 years. I've lived in a ghost's shadow. And now that ghost is real, and she's going to take everything. I don't want your money, Grace said quietly. I never did. I just wanted to understand who I am. You're a threat. That's who you are. The sound of sirens cut through the night. Robert had called the police. Claudia's eyes went wild. She grabbed Noah, pulling him close. Don't come near us, any of you. Mom, let him go. Caleb's voice was steady despite his tears. Please don't make this worse. Worse. It can't get worse. I've already lost everything. Claudia was crying now, mascara streaming down her face. I just wanted to secure our future. I just wanted my son to have what he deserves. What I deserve, Caleb said, his voice hard, is a mother who isn't a monster. The words hit Claudia like a physical blow. Ethan burst into the room, Robert behind him, followed seconds later by 2 police officers. Ma'am, we need you to let the child go and come with us, one officer said calmly. Claudia looked around the room, at Caleb's devastated face, at Ethan's cold fury, at Grace's quiet strength, at Noah's confused tears, her entire world, crumbling in real time. I was just trying to protect us, she whispered. I was just trying to keep our family together. You destroyed it instead, Ethan said. Let Noah go. Claudia, for a moment, it seemed like she might refuse. Then, with a broken sob, she released Noah, who ran immediately to his father. The police moved in, reading Claudia her rights as they handcuffed her. She didn't resist, just stood there, tears streaming, all the fight gone out of her. As they led her toward the door, she looked back at Caleb one last time. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, baby. Caleb turned away, unable to look at her, and then she was gone, and the house was silent except for Noah's quiet crying. Grace sank into a chair, her whole body shaking. Caleb sat beside her, neither of them speaking. Ethan held Noah, whispering soothing words while the little boy sobbed into his shoulder. Robert stood by the door, looking at the shattered family before him. It's over, he said quietly. It's finally over. But looking at their faces, at the grief and betrayal and confusion, Grace wasn't sure anything was over at all. It felt more like an ending and a beginning, all tangled up together, and she had no idea how to untangle it. The police station was cold and sterile, fluorescent lights humming overhead as Grace sat in a small conference room, giving her statement for what felt like the 100th time. Detective Maria Santos sat across from her, patient and kind, walking her through every detail of her meeting with Veronica. The USB drive, everything Claudia had done. You've been incredibly brave, Detective Santos said as they finished, coming forward with this evidence, despite everything you've been through. Grace didn't feel brave. She felt exhausted, hollowed out, like someone had reached inside and scooped out everything that made her her. What happens now? She asked. Claudia Bennett will be formally charged with attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, child endangerment, and several other counts. With the evidence you've provided, the case is solid, Detective Santos closed her notebook. Veronica Sullivan is still at large, but we've issued a warrant. When we find her, she'll face her own charges for kidnapping. She helped me, gave me the evidence that stopped Claudia. That doesn't erase what she did to you 18 years ago. Justice isn't always clean, Grace. Sometimes people do terrible things and good things, and we have to hold them accountable for both. Grace nodded, too tired to argue. When she finally left the police station, dawn was breaking over Charleston. Ethan was waiting in the parking lot, leaning against his car, looking like he'd aged a decade overnight. "How's Noah?" Grace asked. Scared, confused. He doesn't understand why his mother isn't coming home. Ethan's voice was rough. "Robert's with him and Caleb right now. I needed to make sure you were okay. I don't think I know what okay means anymore." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. "I need to tell you something," Ethan said finally, "and I need you to really hear it. What Claudia said, about you taking everything, about the inheritance, none of that matters to me. You could walk away right now, never speak to me again, and I wouldn't care about the money or the estate. I just want you safe. I just want you to have the life you deserve." Grace felt tears prick her eyes. "I don't know what life I deserve. I don't know who I'm supposed to be." "You're supposed to be whoever you want to be. Grace or Isabel or something in between. That's your choice, no one else's." He hesitated, then added quietly, "But I hope, someday, you'll let me be part of your life. Not as Isabel's father trying to reclaim the past, but as someone who wants to know the woman you've become. I think I'd like that," Grace whispered. "Someday, when I figure out who that woman is." The story broke nationwide within hours. Kidnapped heiress found alive after 18 years. Stepmother arrested for attempted murder. Grace's face was everywhere. News channels, social media, newspapers. Reporters camped outside her apartment, outside the Bennett estate, everywhere she might be. She stopped leaving her apartment entirely, stopped answering calls from anyone except Ethan, Caleb, and Dr. Chen. The world wanted a piece of her story, but she had nothing left to give. Caleb visited her 3 days after Claudia's arrest, bringing Chinese takeout and a weary smile. "Thought you might be going stir-crazy," he said. "You have no idea." Grace let him in, grateful for the company. "How are you holding up?" "I'm not." Caleb collapsed on her couch. "I visited my mom yesterday at the jail." "How was that?" "Awful." She cried the whole time, kept apologizing, kept trying to explain, but there's no explanation that makes what she did okay. He ran his hands through his hair. "The weird thing is, I still love her. She's still my mom. I just don't know if I can forgive her." "You don't have to. Not right now, maybe not ever." "Have you forgiven Veronica?" Grace was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know. She gave me life in one way by helping Teresa raise me, but she also stole it from me by taking me from my real family. How do you measure that? How do you balance those scales? I don't think you can. I think some things are just broken, and you have to figure out how to live with the pieces." They ate in comfortable silence, watching a cooking show neither of them cared about. "Dad wants to do a DNA announcement," Caleb said eventually. "Make it official. Let the world know you're Isabel Bennett. He says it's your decision, though. He won't do it without your permission." Grace's stomach clenched. "What do you think I should do?" "Honestly, I think you should do it. Not for the media or the inheritance or any of that, but for closure, so you can finally stop living in this weird limbo between two identities." Caleb looked at her seriously. "You're my sister, Grace. Isabel. Whatever you want to be called. And I'd like to actually have a sister instead of this undefined thing we are right now." "You really mean that?" "Yeah, I do. I spent years being jealous of a ghost. Turns out the ghost is pretty cool in real life." Grace laughed, surprising herself. It was the first time she'd laughed in days, 1 week after Claudia's arrest. The Bennett family held a private press conference. Grace stood between Ethan and Caleb, Robert Hayes off to the side, facing a room full of reporters and cameras. Her hands were shaking, but Ethan's steadying presence on one side and Caleb's quiet support on the other helped ground her. Ethan spoke first, his voice strong despite the emotion underneath. 18 years ago, my daughter Isabel was taken from us. It destroyed our family, My wife Margaret died without ever knowing what happened to her baby girl. I've spent nearly 2 decades searching, hoping, praying for answers." He paused, looking at Grace with such love it made her chest ache. "Today, I'm here to tell you that Isabel is alive. Through DNA testing and investigation, we've confirmed that Grace Parker, the young woman standing beside me, is my daughter. She was kidnapped by Veronica Sullivan and given to Sullivan's sister to raise. She grew up not knowing who she really was, but she's home now, and while we can't get back the years we lost, we can move forward together." The room erupted with questions, but Ethan held up his hand. Grace would like to say something. Grace stepped forward, her voice shaky but clear. "My name is Grace Parker, and my name is also Isabel Bennett. For a long time, I thought those were 2 different people, 2 different lives that couldn't exist together. But I'm learning that I can be both. I'm the girl who was stolen, and I'm the woman who survived. I'm grateful to Teresa Sullivan, who raised me with love, even though she didn't know the truth. And I'm grateful to Ethan, to my father, for never giving up on finding me." Tears streamed down her face, but she kept going. "What happened to me was terrible. It was cruel and it was wrong. But I'm still here. I'm still standing, and I'm not going to let what was stolen from me define the rest of my life." She looked directly at the cameras. "My stepmother, Claudia Bennett, will face justice for what she tried to do. Veronica Sullivan will face justice when she's found. But I'm choosing not to be consumed by anger or revenge. I'm choosing to heal. I'm choosing to build a future instead of dwelling in the past." She stepped back, and Caleb surprised everyone by putting his arm around her shoulders, a gesture of solidarity that said more than words ever could. The questions came rapid fire after that, but Robert fielded them while Ethan led Grace and Caleb out a side door in the quiet hallway. Grace finally let herself break down. Ethan pulled her into a hug, and this time she didn't pull away. She let herself be held by her father, really held, for the first time in 18 years. "You did so well," he murmured. "I'm so proud of you." "I'm scared," she admitted. "Everything's changing so fast." "I know, but you don't have to do it alone. You have me. You have Caleb. You have people who love you." When they finally pulled apart, Grace saw Noah waiting at the end of the hallway with Robert. The little boy had been kept away from the press conference, but he'd insisted on coming. "Grace?" He ran toward her, and she caught him in a hug. "Are you really my sister?" She laughed through her tears. "Yeah, buddy, I really am." "Good. I always wanted a big sister." He looked up at her with those innocent eyes. "Does this mean you're coming home?" Grace looked at Ethan, then at Caleb, then back at Noah. "Yeah," she said softly. "I think it does." 6 months later, the Bennett estate looked different in spring. The gardens bloomed with color, azaleas and camellias and roses climbing the stone walls. The windows were open, letting warm air drift through rooms that had been closed off for too long. Grace, she'd decided to keep the name, adding Bennett to the end, Grace Isabel Parker Bennett, a mouthful that honored all the pieces of herself, stood in the kitchen making breakfast. It was a Saturday morning ritual. She'd started 2 months ago when she'd finally moved back into the estate. Noah sat at the counter, swinging his legs and narrating a story about his toy dinosaurs fighting dragons. The nightmares had mostly stopped, replaced by the normal dreams of a 6-year-old boy who felt safe in his own home. And then the T-Rex said, "You shall not pass," Noah declared dramatically. "Pretty sure that's from a different movie, buddy," Caleb said, shuffling into the kitchen in sweatpants and a faded band t-shirt. He'd graduated high school 2 weeks ago and had decided to take a gap year before college. Time to process everything, to heal, to figure out who he wanted to be. "It's called creative license," Noah said seriously, making both Grace and Caleb laugh. Ethan appeared in the doorway, already dressed for the day, despite it being barely 8 a.m. Some habits died hard, but he smiled more now, laughed more. The weight he'd carried for 18 years had finally lifted, even if the scars remained. "Smells good," he said, kissing the top of Grace's head as he passed, a gesture that had taken months to feel natural, but now came easily. "Pancakes and bacon, nothing fancy." "Everything you make is fancy to me. I've been living on takeout and frozen dinners for years." They ate together at the long dining table that had once felt too empty, and now felt just right. Conversation flowed easily. Noah's upcoming field trip, Caleb's plans to volunteer at a youth center, Ethan's meeting with the foundation board later that week. The Bennett Foundation for Missing Children had launched 3 months ago. Ethan had poured his energy and resources into it, turning his personal tragedy into something that could help other families. Grace had helped design the programs, drawing on her own experience to create support systems for found children struggling with identity and trauma. "Oh, I almost forgot," Ethan said. "Robert called this morning. They found Veronica." The room went quiet. Grace set down her fork carefully. "Where?" "Oregon. Small coastal town. She'd been working at a diner under an assumed name." Ethan's expression was complicated. "She didn't run when the police came. She said she was tired of running. She's being extradited back to South Carolina this week." "Are you going to go see her?" Caleb asked Grace. "I don't know. Part of me wants closure. Part of me thinks I've already found it." Grace looked at Ethan. "What do you think?" "I think you should do whatever feels right for you. There's no wrong answer here." Grace nodded slowly. "Maybe I'll go once to say, I don't know what. Something. I'll go with you if you want." Caleb offered. "Moral support. Thanks. I might take you up on that." After breakfast, while Noah played in the garden and Caleb disappeared to his room, Grace found Ethan in his study. He was looking at the old missing person file, not obsessively anymore, but with a kind of quiet remembrance. "Can I come in?" she asked from the doorway. "Always." She sat in the chair across from his desk, the same place she'd sat 6 months ago when he'd first told her the truth. It felt like a lifetime ago. "I've been thinking about Mom," she said. "Margaret, the mother she didn't remember but had learned about through photos and stories. I wish I could remember her." "So do I. She would have loved the woman you've become." Ethan pulled out a small velvet box from his desk drawer. "I was saving this for the right time. I think maybe now is that time." He handed her the box. Inside was a delicate silver necklace with a crescent moon pendant. "It was your mother's. She wore it every day, after she died. I put it away, thinking I'd give it to you when you came home." His voice caught. "It belongs to you now." Grace's eyes filled with tears as she lifted the necklace, watching it catch the light. "It's beautiful." She was beautiful, inside and out. "And so are you." Ethan came around the desk, helping her clasp the necklace. "You have her kindness, her strength, her ability to see the good in people even when they don't deserve it. I don't feel strong most days. Strength isn't about never falling apart. It's about putting yourself back together afterward. And you've done that, Grace. You've taken something horrific and you've survived it. That's strength." They stood together for a moment, and Grace realized this was what home felt like. Not a place, but a feeling. Safety and love and belonging. That afternoon, Grace visited Dr. Chen for her regular session. "You seem lighter today, Doctor," Chen observed. "I feel lighter. For the first time in months, I feel like I can breathe without drowning in questions. That's significant progress. What's changed? I think I've finally stopped trying to choose between Grace and Isabel. I'm both. I'm neither. I'm just me, whoever that is." She smiled. "And I'm okay with not having all the answers yet. That's a beautiful place to be. So what comes next?" "I'm enrolling in college in the fall. Psychology, I think. I want to help other people who've been through trauma. Turn my experience into something useful." Grace touched the moon pendant at her throat. "And I'm going to visit Veronica, face to face. Say what I need to say. Are you prepared for that?" "No, but I'm going to do it anyway." 2 weeks later, Grace and Caleb drove to the detention center where Veronica was being held pending trial. "You don't have to do this," Caleb said, as they sat in the parking lot. "I know, but I need to." The visiting room was stark. White walls, metal tables, guards watching carefully. When Veronica was brought in, Grace barely recognized her. She looked smaller somehow, diminished by guilt and time. They sat across from each other, separated by a table that might as well have been an ocean. "Thank you for coming," Veronica said quietly. "I didn't think you would. I almost didn't. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. What I did to you, to your family, there's no excuse." Veronica's hands shook. But I need you to know that Teresa loved you. Every single day of her life. She loved you like you were her own. That part was real. I know. And I loved her too. She was a good mother to me. Grace's voice was steady, which makes what you did even more complicated. You stole me from one family but gave me to someone who loved me. How am I supposed to reconcile that? You're not. There is no reconciling it. What I did was unforgivable. Full stop. Veronica looked directly at her. I stole your childhood. I stole your mother's final years of peace. I stole your father's hope. And I did it for revenge. The most selfish, cruel reason imaginable. I've had 18 years to regret it. And it's not enough. A lifetime of regret wouldn't be enough. Grace was quiet for a long moment. Then, I don't forgive you. I might never forgive you. But I also don't want to carry the weight of hating you for the rest of my life. So I'm letting it go. Not for you. For me. Because I deserve to be free of this. Tears streamed down Veronica's face. Thank you. That's more grace than I have any right to. Yeah, it is. Grace stood to leave, then paused. I hope you find some kind of peace, Veronica. Even in prison. Even with what you've done. Everyone deserves a chance at redemption. Even if they never get forgiveness. As they walked back to the car, Caleb put his arm around Grace's shoulders. That was incredibly brave. It didn't feel brave. It felt necessary. Sometimes those are the same thing. That evening, the whole family gathered in the living room. Noah insisted on a movie night. Picking an animated film about dragons that he'd seen a dozen times but never got tired of, they piled onto the couches. Noah between Grace and Ethan. Caleb sprawled in an armchair. Robert Hayes even stopped by with popcorn and stayed for the movie. The house was full of laughter and warmth and life. Halfway through the film, Noah fell asleep against Grace's shoulder. She looked down at him, then across at Ethan, who was watching her with such open love it made her chest ache in the best way. Thank you, she mouthed silently. For what? He mouthed back. For never giving up. His eyes filled with tears, but he smiled. Never. After the movie ended and Noah was tucked into bed, Grace stood on the back porch, looking out at the gardens. The moon was full, casting silver light across everything. Caleb joined her, handing her a cup of tea. So this is it, huh? He said. The new normal. I guess so. Is it weird? Definitely, but good weird. He bumped her shoulder with his. I'm glad you're here. Sis, I'm glad I'm here too. From inside, they could hear Ethan playing piano. Something soft and melancholy and beautiful. And then, spontaneously, Grace started humming along. The melody that had brought her home. The impossible song, Duerme, mi niño. Bajo las estrellas. Caleb smiled. You should go sing with him. Yeah, I think I will. She found Ethan at the piano, his fingers moving across the keys with practiced ease. When she entered the room, he looked up, and without words, she sat beside him on the bench. Together, for the first time as father and daughter who truly knew each other, they sang the lullaby that had waited 18 years to be shared again. The moon rose over Charleston. The Bennett estate, scarred but healing, stood strong in the night,